The year was 1988. Akira had taken Japan by storm, inspiring countless artists and filmmakers. Even today, 30 years after its release, it is still highly regarded as one of the greatest animated films ever made. From its story, its visuals, and apocalyptic themes, Akira remains a staple of pop culture. Many elements of its story have been borrowed by other media. Take, for instance, the 2012 film Chronicle, which features a plot about a group of teenagers who gain psychic powers, with one of them becoming a madman with a god complex. Remind you of anything? Then there's Rian Johnson's Looper, which features a subplot about a young boy who's essentially a telekinetic god. And most recently, we've had Netflix's Stranger Things, which features a plot about a young girl who gains psychic abilities due to the results of government experiments. And it looks like even Michael Mann and Kanye West are fans. It's also constantly referenced by animators around the world. Time and time again, you'll find references to Kanada's iconic bike slide, or his iconic attire, or Tetsuo's grotesque transformation. The fact of the matter is, Akira's influence cannot be understated. Katsuhiro Otomo did not just create a franchise. What he created is a gateway drug, one that led many people to discovering anime and defining a generation for years to come. Eventually, Akira attracted the eye of Hollywood, but I'm afraid that this is where things get a tad bit crazy. You see, for the past 15 years now, Akira has been scheduled for a live-action adaptation, but unfortunately, the project hasn't really gone anywhere. It all started back in 2002. In that year, Warner Bros. Pictures had managed to acquire the rights to Akira from its manga publisher, Kodansha Comics. It was to be produced by Lionel Wingram, as well as infamous producer John Peters. I suggest looking up The Death of Superman Lives to know more about him. The first director ever involved with the Akira project was Stephen Norrington. Norrington is mostly known for directing The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and the first Blade movie. He's also done work as a special effects artist on films like Aliens. Norrington's films seem to have a prevalence for bloody violence and unique special effects, so I suppose I can see why Warner Bros. Chose him to direct, as Akira does have a reputation for its brutal tone. Helping Norrington to write the project was fellow screenwriter James Robinson, who also wrote the screenplay for The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. On the Akira project itself, Norrington stated that he wished to preserve the tone, the visual and epic scope of the original, whilst telling a somewhat more accessible story to Western audiences. Not much is known about this portion of the project, other than the fact that Norrington wanted Kaneda and Tetsuo to be brothers. Unfortunately, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen proved to be a financial and critical failure. A few months later, Stephen Norrington left the project. Whether or not this was by his own admission or by the instruction of Warner Bros. Is currently unknown. At this point, it seemed like the Akira project was going nowhere, and any sort of development would not happen for quite some time. That is until 2004, when French director Jean-Christophe Kumar, otherwise known as Pitoff, was signed on. Pitoff is mainly known for directing Catwoman, but unfortunately his involvement in the project was short-lived, and not much is known about his ideas. Flash forward to 2006, when Irish director Rory Robinson, who despite having barely any films under his belt, was approached by Warner Bros. To direct, with Robinson pitching the idea as City of God plus Blade Runner. He had hoped to split the story into two movies. The first film would focus on volumes 1 to 3, and the second would focus on volumes 4 to 6. To write the project, Robinson brought along screenwriter Gary Whitta. Whitta is mostly known for writing the screenplay of The Book of Eli, as well as co-developing the story for Rogue One, a Star Wars story. This is where the project really started to come into fruition. as both Robinson and Wada began to construct the story, looking for certain elements they wished to change from the source material. For instance, the setting of Akira went from the fictional Neo-Tokyo to what they referred to as Neo-Manhattan. Wada, in an interview with Slash Film in 2015, had this to say: "Manhattan became Japanese sovereign territory as New Tokyo, with 10 million Japanese living there. It just happened to be located in the east coast of the United States," he said. "I thought it was an interesting way to fuse Western and Eastern cultures in the movie, and allow a mix of actors from both, rather than just whitewashing the film, which I think a lot of people were anticipating." Eventually, Warner Brothers entered a bidding war to reacquire the rights to Akira, after losing it some time ago. And during this time, Robinson had gathered several artists to develop concept art for the film, much of which can now be found on his website. The art itself is quite incredible, with scenes from the original film recreated in photorealistic pieces. As a matter of fact, looking through the art, it seems like they were going for a shot-for-shot remake, a la Zack Snyder's Watchmen. The amount of attention to detail is pretty impressive, although I really wouldn't want the live-action Akira movie just to be a remake of the film. Perhaps one of the most fascinating things to find on the website is the concept art for Kaneda and Tetsuo. It seems like Robinson envisioned the talents of Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Chris Evans to play the leads, which is a bit of a stray away from the source material. Not only have the characters' races been changed, but also their age. What's even stranger is that Tetsuo's name here has been changed to Travis, while Kaneda, despite being played by a white actor, still retains his Japanese name. Not that I'm getting political. I understand that there are some necessary changes for an adaptation. It's just that these changes seem a bit strange. Then again, it is just concept art and not really a representation of the film's final product. Moving on, along with this concept art, Robinson also created a conceptual presentation for the film, which mainly consisted of footage from other sci-fi and action films that would serve as templates for what the general look and tone of the Akira movie would be. But included within the presentation are a few pre-visualization CGI footage, giving us a glimpse into what Robinson had in mind for the final product. But unfortunately, the story only gets worse from here.
She don't love